Okay. Alessia, you can now speak.
Okay. Good morning to everyone and welcome to this web conference, Bioeconomy for Soil Regeneration, organized by Resoil Foundation. This conference is part of the All for Climate Italy initiative that is promoted by the Italian Ministry for the Ecological Transition in the occasion of the pre-COP26. I'm Alessia Campora, a postdoc researcher at Roma Tre University and also a member of the Resoil Scientific Committee. The Resoil Foundation is promoted by the University of Bologna, Coldiretti, Novamont, and the Turin Polytechnic. And the main aim is to promote soil health and local regeneration. Today, our speaker, through their presentation, will explore the role of circular bioeconomy also as a key tool for soil regeneration, decarbonizing the economy, and creating value and resources from locally produced waste. So after this brief introduction, I don't want to take time from our speaker. We have a very full program today. So I think we can start with the speaker presentation. But first of all, I want to thank them all and all of you also for participating in this conference and also provide that I think we provide meaningful contribution to the advances on this topic. Today, we will start our conference with Laura Vallaro, a young activist and the Italian representative of Friday for Future. Laura will talk about the critical role of soil for future generations. So, Laura, you have the floor now.
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the people. I will be in the streets to strike for the climate in Milan, because of course in these days in the Youth COP and pre-COP we have a lot of promises and anti-talks like in the many previous international conferences. The people in power, the politicians, have said that they want to listen to the youth, to the young generations. But in fact, emissions are still rising and are projected to rise of 16% in 2030 based on 2010 levels. And the countries of G7, between of them there is also Italy, have funded tens of thousands of dollars in fossil fuels instead of renewables, and more than in renewables energy, recovering from the pandemic. This of course means that they are not still listening to us, neither to the current best available science, nor they are committing the promises they made in the Paris Agreement in 2015. Of course, the work it's very complex and complicated, and for this reason, we can't pretend to solve this crisis without fully understand it or without treating it as an emergency. And this is why the voices of the science and together the people who are already experiencing the consequences need to be listened. And still they are not. This is why meetings like this should be listened by the people in power, the politicians. Regarding soil, it of course has a big role in the climate and environmental crisis, even if it's not so much considered. And if today the soil is sequestering a big amount of the carbon emissions, everywhere it is degrading and losses. According to the Food and Environmental and Agriculture Organization, 1/3 of planet's particular importance are the soils with high level of organic content, like peatlands and temperature vulnerable permafrost zones, which will likely become net sources of greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, this impacts also the present living conditions of so many people around the world. This not only impacts the climate, global climate, as in 2015, more than 500 million people lived in areas which experienced desertification between 1980s and 2000, with the highest numbers of people affected in South and East Asia, the Circum-Sahara region, including North Africa and the Middle East. These are the regions most affected by the climate crisis, not only by desertification and loss of fertile soil. And these are the regions most affected by this crisis, even if the state have had little or no responsibility in causing it. So it's also a matter of injustice in how we treat this crisis and how it affects the people. And the number of people living in areas experiencing desertification is growing fast, causing the loss of fertile soils and livelihood for millions. Those people need to be listened and needs to be at the center of meetings like the Youth COP and the Pre-COP and the Conference of Parties. Those people who had to flee, who have lost their homes, we need also the public opinion to understand that if we continue like this now, such disasters and loss of fertile soil will increase, displacing millions and impacting the food chain system and the economy. This is happening now and will go worse if we don't act, of course. But people around the world don't fully understand this basic science fact. And we also need the public opinion to understand that not fighting the climate and environmental crisis means these losses in the food chain and the economy system. And the people in power who are postponing the actions are responsible of these losses and deaths. The science is clear, has been clear, and these data are clear from years and in some cases decades. They are simply not included in the current policies. Like, for example, are not included in the European Common Agricultural Policy that has been accepted this year. It not includes most aspects of soil conservation and sustainable agriculture and land management, as it's not in line with the Paris Agreement that moves away from the possibility of preserving our present and future living conditions. I'm not a scientist, and I'm happy of being here with some scientists and experts. And I am doing everything I can as a student to make people understand these important, crucial numbers and to make people empower, accountable in front of the science. And I think that this is the most important thing we can do to change and to change now, not in the future. It's working, of course. The people are waking up and more people are understanding these numbers and are listening to those who explain these numbers, but it's not still leading to any substantial change because we are not still enough. We need so everyone possible to be aware, and this is why we are striking to put the attention of the public and the people in power on these numbers, which has been ignored for years and decades. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for your speech and for your commitment. As Laura correctly illustrates, soil are at the center of the climate change fight. So our next speaker, that is Professor Rosa Poch, will talk about the role of soil in decarbonizing the economy, also highlighting as this can be a powerful tool in mitigating and adapting to climate change consequences. Professor Rosa Poch is a chair of the Intergovernmental Technical Panel on Soil and professor of soil sciences at the University of Lleida. So, Professor Poch, if you are ready.
Thank you very much, Alessia, and thank you very much for, well, here. I think that now it's okay. Presentation? Yeah?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alessia, and thank you for the invitation to participate in this forum. It is really a pleasure to explain the most recent initiatives in the frame of the Global Soil Partnership and the ITPS to promote carbon sequestration in soils in synergy with sustainable management practices as a solution to that Laura was saying before. Well, here you have the classical scheme of the carbon pools in the planet, where it is clear that soil organic carbon doubles that in the atmospheric pool, and it is 3 times the carbon in the above ground biomass of the planet. The question is, why it has been given less attention to than other pools? And the reasons are diverse. First of all, the slower recycling and less human control or perception of we have less control than with the above ground biomass. But I think that it's mainly the lack of knowledge of the mechanisms of soil organic carbon sequestration and how we can affect it. Here we have also the soil inorganic carbon that I always like to draw attention to it, because in average, it has a much longer residence time, so less control from our part in a short term. But recently it has been demonstrated that this boundary between organic and inorganic is not completely correct, and it is strongly influenced by biological activity and management, in particular by irrigation. But much more research is needed to completely understand the mechanisms. Well, here you have the latest global carbon budget available, where we can see that soil can be source or sink of carbon. Here we have soils. Permafrost also are soils, is carbon stored in permafrost soils. And what is clear from this budget is the high risk of carbon release from soils under this pool, under rising temperatures. And we see also the negative trend here of less carbon stored in the biosphere. And for soils is not very good news, because the soil carbon above ground is partly the input of the soil organic carbon. So we see that soil organic carbon from this budget, has it's not likely to have potential to increase in the future. Regarding the different sources of emissions, from which CO2 is the main one, we see that globally, agriculture, forestry, and land use, what is called AFOLU, which are the sectors more related to soils, account for more or less 20% of the global emissions. But we see that this has very strong regional differences regarding regions and source sectors. in the most industrialized regions, as Europe and North America, FOLU is a small part of the emissions, while it is the predominant in Latin America and Africa and Southeast Asia. I think that it is important to show these figures, both the global ones and the regional ones, because sometimes farmers are blamed for being the responsibility of carbon emissions. Yeah, and the reality is that the core of the efforts have to be done in changing the global energy systems, without disregarding, of course, what we can do as agronomists, soil managers, foresters, and so to mitigate the emissions in our fields and to adapt to this change. Well, this is more detailed. The different sectors that affect emissions in the food supply chain. And here we see that soils are implicit in the crop-based emissions and in the land use and crops for animals. So roughly, these sectors are roughly half of the emissions of the food supply chain that would be dependent on how soil is managed. The question is whether it is possible to manage soil so that agricultural practices and land use in general become carbon sinks instead of sources. And scientific evidences in very diverse environments in the globe indicate that increases of soil organic carbon are associated to better soil fertility, to higher, higher carbon sequestration affect also the increase of soil fertility, increased resilience to droughts and floods. It helps to have less erosion, less pollution. It is associated to higher soil biodiversity. So there are a lot of positive effects directly related also to several SDGs. Yeah. So these ecosystem services not only give benefits to the farmer as higher and sustained yields, but also to the general environment of the globe as off-site effects that benefit the whole society. Yeah. So the question was in FAO, in the Global Soil Partnership, how we can reward or compensate the farmers for these global benefits that are given by the management of soils to the society, so that they are acknowledged as positive agents in climate change mitigation. So the Global Soil Partnership has designed a very ambitious initiative, what is called REGSoil, to promote soil management strategies that increase soil organic carbon. It consists of several instruments that will help their implementation by farmers through appropriate policies in the countries where this scheme is adopted. The final objective is to build a mechanism by which these off-site environmental services provided by those farmers that increase soil carbon are acknowledged and rewarded, similar to what happens with other sectors, as in clean energy or in transport. To do this, several instruments have been developed and are available in the Global Soil Partnership, some of them as maps. Yeah, this is the map that is existing since several years already of global soil organic carbon. Because to manage carbon, we have to know how much carbon we have in the planet. Others as protocols of measuring, reporting, and verification soil organic carbon, and also the assessment of sustainable soil management. And then we have also extension programs, to promote these practices among farmers. And the two last instruments that have been recently launched are the Global Soil Organic Carbon Sequestration Map and the Recarbonization of Soils, the technical manual of good practices to improve soil organic carbon. I'm going to give more details on them in a minute. What are the bottlenecks to implement this program? Well, I think that mainly the lack of information and basic research on soil carbon dynamics in the soil, although many efforts have been done in the last years. But I think that in a practical way, the problem is that the main problem is the soil carbon turnover times that are too long for the political tempos. Yeah. So the increases of soil organic carbon cannot be certified in a short time after applying a given practice. Yeah. Therefore, the Global Soil Partnership has foreseen two paths to propose this. Yeah, the way to reward or to acknowledge this increase or these practices adopted by farmers. The carbon market path that would be, the recognition of these carbon credits once the increase of carbon has been measured in the field, and the green path that would reward the farmers after applying verified sustainable soil management practices that are known to increase soil organic carbon. So I'm going to present you the two last instruments launched by the Global Soil Partnership last month. The first one is the Soil Organic Carbon Sequestration Map that complements the Soil Organic Carbon Map launched some years ago. As all global maps launched by the Global Soil Partnership, it's not the nice map that you see here, but they have a lot of information behind, and also these maps are not only maps, but also capacity building in the countries to build their own databases. Yeah. So this map will allow, in a regional scale, to know what are the soils with more capacities to sequester carbon if well managed. So it's a first approximation. Of course, it's a global map, it's a regional assessment. It has a lot of shortcomings, but yeah, it's the first map in this sense. Yeah. In this map, there are 4 scenarios. If you enter this website, there are 4 scenarios. The first 3 scenarios are 3 increasing levels of implementing soil sustainable management. And a further scenario is simulating what would happen if a soil was added 20% more carbon with respect to its storage in the first 30 centimeters. Here you have the result of this 4th scenario. And we can see that the areas with highest potential are the temperate zones, occupied by croplands and grasslands, as a first approximation, as I say. A final analysis of this map is still pending because it's very recent, but this graph presents the potential of soils to offset part of the CO2 emissions according to several authors. We see that the estimations from the first ones have been decreasing because besides the physical constraints that I suppose that the speakers after me will speak more about it, practically it's impossible for soils to offset all greenhouse gas emissions due to technical and socioeconomical reasons maybe. But strong evidence exists that many sustainable practices can be applied to a wide range of environments that increase soil and carbon, and, as I said, provide additional benefits, so that soil recarbonization becomes both a mitigation and an adaptation strategy in front of climate change. In fact, the last estimations are of the same order of magnitude of than the CO2 emissions from land use change. And the second product has been also launched this last month and is online. It's a collection of practices and case studies gathered in this manual, or manuals, I must say. It is a very ambitious and extensive work with almost 400 authors and about 1,500 pages, which shows scientific evidence of soil organic carbon gains after the application of given practices in different environments, as well as the additional benefits provided by them to the rest of soil ecosystem services in a structured manner. Again, a detailed analysis of the data collected is foreseen, and due to the time restrictions, I cannot extend more on that, but I invite you to go to the links and have a look to them. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you for your very interesting presentation, as also because you correctly pointed out that the interlinked positive effect of sustainable soil management, but also with the aim to increase soil organic carbon. So the next speaker will go more technical on this topic. This is Professor Steve Mcgrath, that is head of the Department of Sustainable Agricultural Sciences at Rothamsted Research. He is an expert on soil crop sciences, and in his presentation, he will show how different soil type and land management can be taken into account when assessing soil organic carbon status. And also, he will show the potential for improving storage in soils. So, Professor Mcgrath.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, good morning. I'm going to talk about some lines of evidence for how we can manage soil to increase carbon, as Rosa has very nicely introduced. So I'm showing some evidence. It's actually from UK studies, but we think it has a wider application. And these, based on the science, are going back to how carbon is stored in soils. So just briefly, binding of organic carbon with mineral particles protects the soil organic carbon. And the relative amounts of soil organic carbon and clay have been related to soil structure and management. So the diagram on the right basically shows that what we're really interested in is the carbon which stays longer in soil. This is the dark brown, small pieces. And you can see they're more or less covered or enveloped in clays and protected in this way. And they stay longer, as I say, than recently added large organic materials. So what would we know about the soil organic carbon dynamics? Well, we've done a lot of modeling at Rothamsted, and Rothamsted carbon model is used by the FAO to train people in looking at potential soil carbon sequestration. But we do know two important things. It reaches an equilibrium if you're adding some new materials from the bioeconomy, for example, and it does not continue increasing forever. This is called saturation. And the other important point is that it will decrease if the inputs cease or they change, they drop in some way. So in other words, it's reversible. It can go down. So these are two very important background pieces of information. What we've done recently is look at this influence of soil organic carbon and clay. And the scheme here is on the right. You can see what happens if you have soils with increasing carbon or increasing clay. And there's been a study with some Polish, French soils by Dexter, which was looking for, if this is the protection by the clay, what is the kind of ideal ratio? And that turns out to be 1 to 10, according to Dexter. So you can think of it this way: if it's less than 1 to 10, there is potential for putting in more carbon, having it more protected. If it's above 1 to 10, then it's kind of oversaturated and likely to be unprotected and therefore to be released. And this is what Rosa was talking about, a source or a sink. We've gone further than that and looked at information from some other work that was in Swiss pasture soils and arable soils, where these authors came up with 1 to 13, the purple line, and the 1 to 8 line. And these are indicative of really good soils and soils which are in very poor condition. And so we started to use these and test them against a very big survey in England and Wales to see how they measure up. So the first line of evidence is a survey approach, if you like. This is a national soil inventory. It's on a 5-kilometre grid. These are top soils, 0 to 15 centimetres. And we selected from the database 4 land uses, not peat soils, I should add. And you can see those land uses there: arable, lay grass, permanent grass, or woodland. So what does the evidence show us? Let's have a look. I've got a slide with, there are going to be 3 clicks, and this builds up. So when we look at the land use of woodland, this is the organic carbon versus clay observed in those locations. And you can see in this case in the table, only about 5% are what we call degraded, which is below this 1 to 13. And on the other hand, nearly 70% are in the very good condition, above this 1 to 8 line. What happens if you look at other land uses? Sorry, wrong way. Permanent grass is interesting in that there are a lot of the samples in very good condition, and some more in the degraded position, but not so many. Interesting then, when you start to till the soil or cultivate the soil in any way, you start to get some more which are below this purple line, so more degraded soils. So in lay grass systems, about 15%. And then finally, arable. Arable, almost 40% of the soils are down here. There's a large number of data points here. 40% of the soils are degraded and only 30% are in the very good category. So this tells us the situation from survey data in our soils, and you can see the effect of tillage. So this comes back to what Rosa was talking about, what's technically and socially and economically possible, depending on our land use and how we use the soils. The second line of evidence comes from long-term experiments at benchmark sites. And in these, we have many of these. I'm showing just 2 here. These are long-term because of what Rosa mentioned also, which is that it takes time for soil carbon to change in the order of maybe 5 or 10 years. And you can see these 2 examples are experiments that lasted from 80 years and 50 years, roughly. So here again, on the left, we have a site which has a low clay soil. And it started, as you can see from the point at the beginning here, in a degraded position. It had been arable soil for a long time before the different treatments were imposed. And then on the right, this one called Highfield is a high clay soil, which started after a long period of grassland. So it started in what we call a very good position at the beginning. Then we imposed over a long term contrasting treatments on both sites. So both had grass and legumes, and I won't go into the details of these treatments. We don't have time, but basically the contrast is grass and legumes, which have less tillage, versus all arable systems, which are tilled. And you can see that the grass and legume systems, they actually increase over time from a moderate condition, and they can attain, after some time, a good index, soil carbon index. The arable system, on the other hand, it was degraded, and it actually declined over time with continued arable cultivation. And on the high clay, as I say, it started from originally a grassland in very good condition, but again, under arable conditions, they decline to, at best, a moderate condition, and actually in some of the treatments, they go into this degraded condition. Whereas the grass and legume system actually increased in quality and can attain the very good condition in terms of the quality index. So those 2 pieces of evidence from national scale, and I should say, I'm not reporting here, we went back to some of those national sites 15 years later, and yes, some of them are degraded, mostly the arable soils. Some of them had increased, mostly the woodland soils. And then we have these experimental sites where we have information, and we're learning about the effects of management and inputs. So what does this mean for targets? What I'm talking about for targets here is what is possible, what can you do with inputs and with land management? It seems from our knowledge that it's unlikely that all land uses and soils can reach the same index. You know, people who work and they don't know the soil science, they possibly think that all of the land can have the same sink and reach the same level of this organic carbon index. But that is not possible. And in fact, it depends exactly on the management of the system. So as you can see from the bottom axis, taking into account the percentage clay takes into account the impact of the texture of the specific soil. So what can be achieved if you have a very sandy soil down at the bottom end of this graph, how far you can go up is determined by the texture and the clay in the soil. On the right side of the graph, you can see there is much more potential for increasing from a degraded condition up to the good or very good condition. And then secondly, this red image here is trying to convey the impact of both the land use in terms of vegetation and the tillage. So arable systems are tilled and they are annually sown mainly. Lay arable, you have less tillage and you have more mixed species, legumes and so on with less tillage. Permanent grassland, of course, stays in the soil for a long period of time. And then woodland is, of course, it's a very long process in terms of woodland. So what we know from the two approaches I showed you is that what is realistic to achieve, we think in arable is 1 to 13 or greater. And lay arable 1 to 10, which was, remember, this was a kind of optimum line for protection. Permanent grassland, we think, can reach a 1.8, and woodland can reach much higher than 1.8. And that storage remains in the soil and remains in the wood as long as it's preserved. But of course, as I said at the beginning, remember the two things. There is an equilibrium which is reached, and you don't go any higher. And also, if you then cut down the woodland and remove woodland, of course, everybody knows you lose the carbon in the soil, and it takes a while to get it back again. So the other point I'd like to make about this is that we're talking about where to increase the sinks in agricultural soils, mainly tilled soils. The large number of sites or fields which are in the degraded condition have a large potential to increase soil organic carbon, but it needs a change of practice and change of inputs. If there are agricultural soils which are above this 1 to 8 line, there is also a much higher likelihood of carbon loss. If you stop adding organic materials or start to till that particular soil, for example, plough permanent grassland, then you will lose the carbon. And these are two very important facts which we have to take account of in terms of how we can encourage farmers and encourage industry to preserve soil carbon and increase the sink of soil carbon. So just in summary, soil clay, we think, is a key factor in determining how much carbon soil can hold, and it accounts for differences in soils. We have this index based on the organic carbon to clay ratio, and we have different targets now for different land uses. And that enables us, as I mentioned, to assess the potential in different situations, different types of soil and different land uses. What is the potential for carbon storage? And I think this is very important then for any bioeconomy measures in terms of where things are practiced and how the land is managed to increase the sink and to keep the carbon in the soil, which is, I think, a target for all of us in the face of climate change. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Mcgrath. It was a very nice contribution. The next speaker, Professor Giuliano Langella, is also a researcher at CRISP Research Center and a professor at the University of Napoli Federico II. Professor Langella will present his land support project and also platform, specifically dealing with the land take quantification. So, Professor Langella, if you're ready, you can start.
Yes, thank you. Can you see my desktop?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you very much also for inviting me to share our work here in the development of the land support platform. So the title of my presentation is Challenging Soil Seeding in Europe, an innovative tool. Of course, this tool is related to specific toolbox related to the land take quantification within the land support platform. I'm going to show you this in the upcoming slides. Few words about myself. First of all, I'm a pedologist. As such, I deal with soils. In particular, I'm specialized in pedometrics, which is a branch of soil science, dealing with the study of soils using this quantitative approach. We call ourselves pedometricians. In particular, I'm also focused on the digital soil mapping. Only as an example, very fast, what does digital soil mapping means? We collect information about soils in the field. Here, I just share with you an example according to a farm scale study related to the land of fires, which is an issue in particular in Campania region. So we collect information about soil profiles, soil layers, which are called soil horizons, and then what we do in pedometrics is that we put in relationship this direct information with indirect information, for instance, coming from remote sensing, proximal sensing, as you can see here, and then finally we build these models to make inference in the spatial domain. This only to explain the specific topic of my interest, but now let's go ahead. Nowadays, there is a research is making a huge progress in both research and technological domains. Here we can find some examples. For instance, artificial intelligence applied to the Internet of Things, the 4.0 revolution, both in the primary and secondary sectors. We have a lot of precision farming, precision medicine. We also have this technique, which is out of scope of my research topics, of course, which is a precise gene editing technology. So the list can be very huge. In particular, I would like to focus in the effort in producing massive data, as you can see from this picture here, notwithstanding the availability of advanced technologies and know-how dealing with all this information, we have this tremendous gap between the data that is produced and the data that is actually used or processed. So according to this gap together with the awareness that there is the need for actions limiting the degradation of lands, of soils, pushed my working group to develop geospatial cyber infrastructures, these infrastructures which enable us to build decision support systems. And land support is an example, a declination of these geospatial cyber infrastructures that we can implement. And today I will particularly focus on one toolbox related to the land take. We started these implementations in 2010, and currently we are coordinating this land support project, which is an H2020 project. Here you can find some useful numbers. The coordinator is my colleague, Professor Fabio Terribile, and then the co-coordinator is Dr. Angelo Basile from Siena. I'm coordinating the IT implementation in the project. So what does land support is dealing with? Land support deals with the development of integrated web-based land decision support system, aiming towards the implementation of policies for agriculture and environment. Today we will put we will have a focus more on environment according to the land take issue. So here you can find the land support platform at this address here. Of course, you have, first of all, sign in, then you get the credential, and afterwards you can log in. During the first login, the user can tailor the user interface to his her specific requirements. And we can, of course, deal with both the territorial scale. Why this? Because we implement tools which are available, not all the tools, but a lot of tools are available at different scales, and other tools, of course, are available only at specific scales. But in general, we have all these tools that can be used at the European scale, country scale, regional scale, which is a subnational scale, and of course, also local scale. So today, I'm going to focus on the land take and spatial planning toolbox. And in particular, in this toolbox, I'm going to show you one tool, which is the land take monitoring. So before to go ahead in this example, we do not have enough time to go directly over the platform, but of course, I'm available to any kind of interaction you would like to have about the platform, about the web application, also for future webinars, hands-on sessions, whatever you would like to do with us. We are, of course, available to share the product of our research and development. So first of all, I would like to share with you the infrastructure which is behind, which is under the hood of the land support platform. So we call this infrastructure geospatial cyber infrastructure. Why this? Because this infrastructure is available via the web using a web browser. So the user has to install nothing on his computer, only the web browser connected to the endpoint of our application, and then her can use the tools I was showing you before. It's geospatial because, of course, any kind of information we manage in this infrastructure has a geographical connotation. So in general, I distinguish in the infrastructure between three tiers: the presentation tier, the logic tier, and the data tier. It's very simple. So we have tools, for instance, tools related to land take, soil erosion, nitrate leaching, crop management, ecosystem functions, and so forth. The user can find these tools, of course, in the presentation tier. So you connect there is a web browser, and you can navigate all these tools, and of course, all the tools that are available in order to explore the results coming from running these tools. Then the presentation tier is connected to the logic tier. Once the user selects a tool, for instance, land take, and ask for a run, all the computation is performed in the logic tier. And of course, the presentation tier is also directly connected to the data tier, the layer, the component in which we store all the data, vector data, raster data, also non-spatial data, everything which is required by the infrastructure in order to let the application, the platform, work. So I will skip some more details, and I think I can just start sharing with you the user interface. So as you can see, in principle, it's not so complex. We have the central panel dedicated to the map. It's like the common Google Maps, on which we can select layers or select some vector or raster outputs coming from elaborations, and we can show all this information in this map. Then on the left side, we have the panel dedicated to the data. We have in the data tier, of course, so we can select a vector, raster data, or results coming from the tools, and we can show this on the center map. On the right side, we have two panels, one dedicated to the tools, and the other one dedicated to, as you can see here, we have the toolbox, and the other one dedicated to the results. Of course, results are stored in the system, so the user can asynchronously run an elaboration. The user can disconnect from the application, closing the web browser, and the user can, of course, connect later on, the day after a week, after a month, and the user will find the results stored in the system. Of course, we have different kinds of analysis of the results. We have charts, tables, reports. I'm going to show you some of these details in the upcoming slides. But let's keep things simple. I'm going to explain the main frame of the logical architecture, so how the spatial decision support system works. As you can see, we have 4 simple steps. The first step is the definition of the region of interest. Why this? Because any query, any request to the application has a geographical context. Then we have to fill out the form, which is related, of course, to the tool we are interested in, inserting the parameters that are specific for that tool. Then we ask the system to run the model, which is, of course, the execution of a pipeline in the logic tier, so under the hood. Why a pipeline? Because there are some tools which require more models in a chain in order to calculate the results that we would like to share with the end user. And finally, we get the results. As I told you before, we can navigate results according to the tools, and to sometimes also to the user. We can share maps, charts, tables, and of course, reports. So let's make an example related to the length take. So let's repeat this general workflow applied to the length take monitoring tool. So what do we have to do? First, we have to define, at least in our mind, the region of interest we are interested in. First step. Second step, we have to fill out the form. So we go to the toolbox, we select the tool, which is the length take monitoring. When we click this tool, a form opens. The user has 2 options to define region of interest. Can select a drawn region of interest, which is particularly interesting for the analysis at hand, or the user can select whatever administrative limit in Europe. So for all over Europe, you can select a municipality or a province or a region, all the NUTS levels that we have in Europe. Of course, for this specific tool, length take monitoring, we have to provide a start and an end date, because of course we would like to compare the status of imperviousness of length take at these 2 different dates. And we have also other optional parameters, for instance, a time series analysis, which is something we are working on during these days and will be released for the middle of October, and also decide the pixel size at which to perform this kind of analysis. Once the user click on evaluate, all the information is passed to the backend, to the logic tier, and we provide this GPU computing effort in order to calculate results in real time or quasi real time, according to the size of the region of interest. Finally, we get these results that in this particular example, I'm sharing with you the PDF report. So there is a sort of post-processing in the middleware, which is capable of collecting all the information related to the region of interest and the results coming from the specific pipeline, the specific model, and all this information is put in a PDF report. So we have information related to general information related to the region of interest, the parameters used for the specific elaboration. Then we, for instance, in this chart, we put together information of the imperviousness with the population trends in order to understand if the two have something in common or not. Here we have a static raster map. Maybe you cannot see here, but we have some red pixels and there are some few green pixels. You will understand what are these pixels. Here we have red pixels showing the loss of rural areas and green pixels showing the gain in rural areas. Of course, comparing the two dates the user set in the form. So in this case, for instance, comparing 2006 with 2009. And finally, apart from a purely quantification of the land take, we also provide a way to analyze the surfaces lost in terms of a potential loss in soil productivity by putting these pixels lost in contrast with other information available in the platform. And we can also distinguish different levels of soil productivity. And this way, we can also provide a proxy of the quality of soils we are losing in this particular time frame. So I go directly to conclusions, but of course, I repeat, I'm completely available for questions or any kind of interaction related to the toolbox or the platform or the project, whatever you would like. The conclusion is that the key objective of our approach is to enable and support an informed and sustainable land management. How we can reach this, because our approach consists in the combination of huge data using these data cube technologies. I did not say you before, but for the land take analysis, we are using rasters at 20 meters resolution. And also, starting from 2018, we have rasters at 10 meters resolution. So also for wide geographical areas, we have these details in this high detail in the analysis. Then we combine this huge data with modeling pipelines, thanks to the high performance computing, and all this in combination with smart and easy to use graphical user interface enable us to produce this dynamic geospatial decision support systems. Only a few words about some of the characteristics these SDSS, geospatial decision support systems, must have. In particular, I would like to highlight the what-if modeling, which is enabled in our land support platform. And this is very useful because you can build scenario analysis. Of course, this is not a characteristic which is available in all the tools, but on some agricultural and also environmental tools, we have this opportunity in order to build what happens if I change something. Okay, so I stop here for the lack of time, but I repeat, I'm available for any kind of questions or curiosity.
Thank you, Professor Langella.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think your presentation clearly shows how also technological innovation is a powerful tool to achieve the goal of healthier soils. And now we are the next talk will be presented by Dr. Arianna Pasa. Arianna is a research program officer in the Research and Innovation Unit at the Directorate General of Agriculture and Rural Development at the European Commission. And she will introduce the European Commission initiative on soil health and food that with the main aim of identifying 100 living labs and lighthouses to lead the transition toward healthy soil by 2030. So Arianna, if you're ready.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me here today. I think someone from the staff will upload my presentation. Well, I maybe can start to speak. As you said, Alessia, I work in the DG responsible for agriculture and rural development. It is, of course, responsible for the common agricultural policy, but also for research and innovation in agriculture, forestry, and rural areas. The project that was just presented by Professor Langella is just one of the examples of how European funds can support research on soil. I still don't see my presentation. Is it possible to have it?
Yeah, just one moment. I think they're uploading it.
Mm-hmm. I continue, and hopefully slides will arrive.
Maybe we continue with the speech, and then we will try to upload the presentation.
If you want, I can also share. It's not
maybe
perfect.
Yes, it will be good. Yes.
But I can share.
Arianna, can you see the presentation on the screen? I thought.
No, I don't.
I can see it on YouTube.
Okay, that's great. So I can continue, and I'll just say next slide. But if if people can see it, I think it's okay. So I'm here today to present the mission on soil. It is called a Soil Deal for Europe. Let's start from the beginning. What are EU missions? EU missions are a novelty in Horizon Europe, which is the new framework program for research and innovation. So I hope you have already heard about it. If not, it's okay. It's a new instrument. The characteristic of a mission is to be bold and aspirational, to have a measurable goal that can be achieved in a specific time frame. The idea of having mission is that this new instrument can contribute to solve major societal challenges. And the co-legislators have identified 5 mission areas in which we are asked to act. We can go to the next slide. The legal basis is Horizon Europe, as I said. It is the framework program for research and innovation. So missions are rooted in R&I, but they are aimed to go beyond and to mobilize different parts of the society and different funds. We can go to the next slide. Next slide. Once more. Well, the areas that were identified by the co-legislators and then the Commission, with the help of high-level experts and the consultation with citizens, identified specific mission. Here you can see the short titles. It's adaptation to climate change, cancer, climate neutral and smart city, ocean and waters, and of course a soil deal for Europe. Next slide. So why a mission on soil? I think the speakers before me have already introduced some of the elements that say why soils are important for us. Basically, life on Earth depends on healthy soil. Approximately 95% of the food comes directly or indirectly from soil, and apart from that, soil provides essential ecosystem services. They regulate water, which is important to prevent flood and droughts. They host biodiversity. They contribute to nutrient cycling. They can mitigate climate change thanks to carbon sequestration when they are healthy. They also carry our landscape, so they have also a cultural value. But soil has a scarce and non-renewable resources. It is estimated that in Europe, only between 30 and 30% of soils are healthy at the moment. So next slide, please. For a long time, soil has been the big elephant in the room because, I mean, most of the people know about the importance of water. We all care about the quality of the air, but it has not been the same for soil for a long time. If you can click again, thanks. But we observe that things are changing. We can observe that because the society starts to become more aware of the importance of soil. If we see at the mainstreaming channels, we can find documentary on soil. There are also arts books who can value the cultural the cultural elements that soil have. Also, the Parliament supports the mission. The European Parliament supports the mission on soil. So we see that the topic is appearing also on newspaper. So it is really the time to act. We can go to the next slide. Also, because we cannot wait anymore. Here you can see some of the facts related to soil. 2.8 million of soils are potentially contaminated. The real problem with contamination is that a small percentage of soil of land is inventoried. Between 65 and 75 of agricultural soil is found with high level of nutrient inputs. Cropland soils are losing carbon. 25% of land is found with unsustainable water erosion. And in Europe, there are parts of Europe are at risk of desertification. And all of these threats are coming with a cost. And it is estimated that the cost associated with land degradation in the EU may exceed 50 billion per year. Of course, this is a scary picture, and it is more scary if we think that with climate change, the pressure on soil is increasing. So if we can go to the next slide. Why to have a mission on soil? Why to have a soil deal for Europe? As I said before, it is a novel approach to R&I. With Horizon 2020, we didn't start from scratch. With Horizon 2020, around 200 million euro were invested in research related to soil and to practices for land management. But we know that there are already outstanding results and good practices that could be applied. The issue is really to scale up the solution and to change the way we manage our land. So this is why a mission has the potential to mobilize different actors. As I said, it is rooted in R&I, but it really aims to go beyond that, to involve member states, regions, municipality, citizen at all levels to really change the way we manage our land for the protection and restoration of soil. The mission is not acting alone. At the European level, we are updating the soil strategy. It should be adopted by the end of the year, and this will provide the policy framework. At the same time, it was also launched the European Soil Observatory, which provide a reservoir for data, but also it is a platform to engage with stakeholders. We can go to the next slide. So the mission on soil is contributing to the Green Deal. Here you can see listed some of the strategies which have targets related to soil. So we know that if we don't act on the way we manage our lands, we cannot achieve the Green Deal. So next slide, please. The mission is a novel instrument also in the way it is created. The Commission in 2019 appointed a high-level group of experts called the Mission Board. Katia Bastioli, who is the speaker after me, was also part of this board. The board was also supported by an assembly, another group of high-level experts that could be consulted. And they were in charge by the Commission to advise on a specific mission that was in the area of soil health and food. After 1 year of work, the Mission Board handed over to the Commission a report called Caring for Soil is Caring for Life. And then the Commission services were in charge of developing an implementation plan for the mission. I'm happy to say that mission were officially launched 2 days ago, and the implementation plans are now public. And at the end of my presentation, you will see some links that you can check if you are interested in knowing more. We can go to the next slide. Yes, very, very good. So you see that the title of the mission is a Soil Deal for Europe. Here is the short version, but basically we want to create 100 living labs and lighthouses to lead the transition toward healthy soils by 2030. So next slide. What do we want to achieve with this mission? The mission has 8 specific objectives. These are reduce land degradation, conserve soil organic carbon stocks, stop soil sealing, reduce soil pollution, prevent erosion, improve soil structure, reduce the global footprint of the EU, and increase soil literacy across the EU. We can go to the next slide. So how will we implement this mission? The mission has 4 building blocks. The first one is research and innovation. So we already know something about soil, but there are research gaps that need to be filled in. So the mission will provide funds also to close these gaps, or to contribute to close these gaps. The second building block is living labs and lighthouses. I think this is the real core of the mission. We want to do research differently. We want that practitioner can take up the results, and we want to experiment in real life conditions. The third building block is soil monitoring. There is a need at European level to harmonize the indicators to monitor soils. Not all the member states are starting from the same baseline, and not all the member states are the same tools and capacities to monitor soil. So this is why there is this building block, and the European Soil Observatory will certainly play a role in the support of the mission. And finally, there is the fourth building block, which is soil literacy, communication, and citizen engagement. Already in the design of this mission, we as the Commission and the board organize many events, including citizen engagement events with randomly selected citizens to collect a feedback from citizens and shape the mission and align this with the societal needs. This is something that we want to continue. We really want to increase the general awareness on the importance of soil, but also we want to offer opportunities for protecting and restoring soils together. We can go to the next slide. So what's next? Already now there is a topic which is open for proposal until the 20th of October. This is the first mission call, and it was really to prepare the ground for the mission. So the title, you can read the title in the slide, is Preparing the Ground for Healthy Soil, Building Capacity for Engagement, Outreach and Knowledge. We are in this moment working to update the Horizon Europe work program. It will be amended by the end of the year. So we will publish more topics to implement the mission in December, and the deadline for submission will be probably open until the end of March. So I'm coming to the end of my presentation. You can see here some useful links, but maybe it is easier if we go to the next slide, that you simply look for the hashtags that you can see, or maybe you cannot see, yes, that you can see in the screen, Mission Soil. If you look for the hashtag in social media, you will find relevant information, or simply if you Google Mission Soil Health and Food, you can easily find the Commission webpage with all the relevant information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arianna. Thank you. Now we have the intervention of a member of the European Commission Mission Board for Soil Health and Food, Kata Bastioli, that is also CEO of Novamont. Dr. Bastioli will introduce in her presentation the role of bioeconomy for soil regeneration and also the best practices that are related to this practice.
Hello to everybody. Do you see my presentation?
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you, and it was very interesting to hear the different presentations which are more on soil. My presentation is centered on bioeconomy and circular bioeconomy, because I think that it's very important to look at the health of soil also in relation to the real economical activities and how to handle these economical activities in order to really to have some positive effects in the shortest time possible, and to accelerate the processes because the ecological transition. I would like to use a sentence of Albert Einstein: "I never think of the future; it comes soon enough." And this sentence is for me very important because in 50 years, starting from 1972, when the limits of growth was published, the book of Club of Rome, then the situation was very clear that the resources of the planet were limited, and that we were starting to erode these resources. And after 50 years, we needed 50 years in order to really realize that the situation was dramatic. And now the future is today, because 2030 is practically today. And so either we are able to accelerate the process, or there is no time to recover. So this is a very important element we have to take in consideration. And the soil aspect, as has been very well said in the previous presentations, is a very critical situation. I don't want to repeat what has been already said by Arianna Paza, but I want just to stress again that soil is a non-renewable resource and is essential for our life. And in the logic of the acceleration process, it's also important to understand that in areas like the Mediterranean area, we have an acceleration of the desertification processes, which is very impressive. In the last 10 years, we have areas which are more in desertification problems big as more than Greece. So it's a very huge problem, and we have to tackle the problem soon. Of course, one of the critical issues is that soil is inside the tragedy of common goods. So we don't have a clear legal system in order to take the value of common goods, and so everybody can extract the common goods and not to regenerate. So this is a very critical issue that we have to tackle as soon as possible.
Katia, sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. Circular bioeconomy, bioeconomy is a group of different sectors. It goes from agriculture to agro-food industry to forests and the paper industry and wood industry and organic waste, as well as the biochemistry and all the products of biochemistry. Bioeconomy is a sector which is very important for Europe. It's very important for Italy. Here, just the numbers of Italy, just to give an idea of the importance of the sector. And is third in Europe for turnover, is the second for research and innovation, first in biodiversity and a number of high quality products. Then in organic waste is collected and food waste is collected for 47% of a total in an average value of 16. And the Italian agriculture is quite interesting because is of course emitting as the others, but less than the others. We have emissions of 30 millions of CO2 versus 76 millions of France, 66 of Germany, 41 of UK and 39 of Spain. And we started since 2011 to reduce the pesticides of 20% in the period 2011-2018 versus other countries which are increasing instead the use of pesticides. So it's this is a good sector which has economical positive results. And from the environmental point of view is has a lot of impact, but less than in other cases. So it's a good platform where to apply the good practices. And this is very important because we know that the technologies are not positive or negative, is how the technologies, the wisdom, how technologies are used. So this is very important to understand how to handle bioeconomy in order to make it as much as sustainable possible. So in the transition process toward a low carbon economy, a sustainable circular bioeconomy has to be intended as a territorial regeneration, as a bridge among different sectors, so giving a value to interdisciplinarity of the sectors and having soil health at its core. This has to be the parameter, the key indicator to understand if the bioeconomy is circular and sustainable. And this can really be a disruptive tool to guide the transformative process toward the resiliency. To do this, we need, as already stressed by Arianna Paz for the soil health, the emissions, soil health and food, we need to be systemic, we need to be transformative and multidisciplinary, and we need to redesign and co-design the systems. Otherwise, we cannot really succeed. And it's so important to work not in silos, but to create the inner, to understand the connections and the correlations among the energy transition, the soil use and soil and water health, the food habits, the food chains, the food waste, the food security, and also the pressure of the anthropogenic activities at multiple levels, which means all this, the problems, to tackle all the problems of pollution. So otherwise, if we consider the energy transition just as an energy aspect and technology, and we see the technologies just from energy point of view, and we don't connect with soil use and with the food habits, etc., we will not accelerate at the path which is needed in order to recover the wasted time. Bio-based products in circular bioeconomy are an important part of the development, but now the point is that bioproducts and food can share the same type of feedstocks. So bioproducts, which means bioplastics, biolubricants, phytosanitary products and products for cosmetics, etc., must be used in a different way than in the past. So they cannot be one of the other products flooding the world, but they have to be instruments to change the paradigm and to decouple the use of resources from development. I like to use making more with less, which is the paradigm that we have to, in some way, to put in practice. And this means to overcome the overexploitation of resources and to reduce the problem of pollution and to try to close the carbon cycle. What to do to achieve this type of result, which is strictly connected with the use of the resources of land and of soil. First of all, three main concepts. First, stop thinking about unlimited growth. We have to stay in the limits of nature. We have to overcome our limits and to exit from our comfort zone. So we cannot grow linearly, for example, in the sector of plastics. Should we grow in a linear way, then it means that in 2050, we should have 1 billion tons of volume every year of plastics. This is absolutely not acceptable, which means to multiply for 3 or 4 the volume of today. So it's also true that we cannot replace, so the point is not to replace traditional products, fossil products with renewable products, because this is absolutely not sustainable. But we need to change the model of development. So the drop-in solutions have to be avoided. And in some cases, it's not always needed to replace renewable with non-renewable, especially when you have the possibility to recycle products, like in the case of bottles, for example. Another concept which is very important in order to reduce the pressure on soil, but also to regenerate the soil, is to use bio-based materials to trigger a cultural change, which means to try to redesign in a complete way the way how we produce, consume, and dispose our products, starting from the growth of added value chain values. And in this case, we can have multiple products, so avoiding completely the scraps. This is so the added value chains are a good basis where to apply the concept of open labs, and this means to involve different actors. It means to start, because we start to know that we don't know everything. So it's important the process of the induced incremental innovation process, which means learning by doing, evolving towards a participative innovation, and trying to overcome the gap of knowledge that we for sure we have. And this type of concept is particularly strong if we apply to areas which have problems of desertification, which are eroded or polluted. And this means that we can have the chance to transform peripheral areas in strategic centers, especially applying, for example, crops, which are pluriannual crops, increasing the carbon in the soil. And we can play on the diversity and on specificity of territories. So it's very important that the territorial aspect of this type of model, linking innovation to cultural heritage and also the local challenges, transforming in this way the bio-based scraps and biomass from marginal area in raw material and sustainable products. And it's very important also the organic waste, which has to be of high quality and to be part of the regeneration of soil. The third element is to stop degradation and the pollution of soil and of water. And this means that we need, when there is the risk of accumulation of products in the environment and in soil, like biolubricants, lubricants, or fossil lubricants, or plastics, microplastics, then it's very important the concept of biodegradation in order not to accumulate in the environment. But this is not enough. So we need a network of treatment plants which assure that no persistent substances accumulate in purified waters, in sludges, in organic matter, and therefore in soil. So a clean organic matter can close the carbon cycle, can regenerate soil fertility and health, maintaining biodiversity, decarbonizing the atmosphere. But we have to know that still in Europe, we have about more than 60 million tons of organic waste wasted in landfills or burnt instead of being again in soil because it's polluted. And this is something that we can tackle as soon as possible. We don't have time to go in other detail of these aspects, but I would like to stress the fourth element, which is to set the priorities based on real impact assessment. We need, I said that we have to start on territorial projects, and we have to measure how our evolution is going on. And so it means that it's necessary the adoption of systemic approach to measure the impact and to have the impact assessment. This requires reliable tools able to measure the environmental, economical, and social impact at a local level and for all the integrated supply chain, not for one part, but for the integrated chain, taking into account their potential for evolution. In fact, this sector is in its infancy, and therefore it has a huge unexpressed potential, which has to be in some way taken in consideration in the impact assessment, because this a huge, enormous potential for innovation and evolution has to be taken in account today in all the impact assessment. And this is very important for the acceleration process, because otherwise it's not possible. I just want to give you now an example because to be practical. And the example is the Italian platform of municipal organic waste with the compost, connected with compost and agriculture, which is involving citizens. This had a very good result. So it's a good platform where to start. What it happened, it was that contemporarily there were good laws on compost, which had to be collected by law separately and without bags or with bags, which are biodegradable, paper or biodegradable bags. And then in 2011, there was another law on the elimination of shopping bags which are non-biodegradable or non-recyclable, non-reusable. This type of laws and the development of the chain of bioplastics, biodegradable bioplastics, as well as the collaboration among different realities, retailers, citizens, composters, farmers, converters, brought to a drastic reduction of the volume of shopping bags, the reuse of the shopping bags for 65% as tools for separate collection of organic waste. This has contributed to the record of 47% of organic collection of food waste, and this also was able to promote a development of biorefineries with a significant investment regenerating in the industrialized areas. With now the turnover is close to 1 billion, 280 are the companies dealing with this type of sector, and a significant number of employment, 3,000 people, plus 10,000 which are connected with the separate collection of organic waste. So this is just an example of the integrated system which has brought also this organic compost to trademark of quality and brought again to soil. To conclude, the circular bioeconomy in action is in a way based again on the integrated value chains in the local areas, and the induced incremental innovation process is key for the acceleration platform. Bioeconomy for territorial regeneration is in this type of logic a very powerful tool to implement the objectives of the Green Deal strategies and policies, as well as the objectives of the mission Soil Health and Food and the other missions. So it's a tool that is correctly declined with the right key performance indicators or circularity, then can bring a very important contribution to a sustainable management of soil. To conclude, a sentence of Andy Warhol: I think having land and not ruining it is the most beautiful art that anybody could ever want. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Bastioli, very inspiring words. And now, as bioeconomy is also, as also Dr. Bastioli pointed out, very related to sustainable agriculture, now Roberto Moncalvo, that is the president of Coldiretti Piemonte and also a board member of Resoil Foundation, will illustrate the main challenge we have to overcome, but also a visionary project that is working with Coldiretti is working on with Novamont Materagro. Please, Roberto Moncalvo.
Okay, good morning to everybody. I will try to share my presentation. I hope it's okay. Okay, I hope you can see it. Okay, so yes. I will shortly present you an important experience in Italy towards a sustainable agriculture. And I will focus my speech on the most recent step of this long experience, and the recent step is Materagro. Materagro is a project developed by Coldiretti at Novamont, and as you know, Novamont is an Italian company that is an international leader in the bioplastic sector and also in the development of biochemicals, and it's a company led by Katia Bastioli that you heard before my speech. And Coldiretti is the biggest farmers association in Italy and Europe. We have more than 1.6 million members, so Italian farmers that are that are associated in Coldiretti. And with the Materagro, bio-based chemicals and agriculture are combined together in a process of induced incremental innovation. As I said before, Materagro is the most recent step of a long-standing partnership between Novamont and Coldiretti. We started our collaboration in 2004, and 3 years later, in 2007, we started our experimental crops in central Italy, especially it was an innovative sunflower chain for the production of biolubricants in Umbria region. Another important milestone of our collaboration was in 2013 with the Memorandum of Understanding in Sardinia region for cultivation of cardoon in marginal lands. 2 years later, we were ready to involve also the consortia agrari that are the most important farmers cooperatives in Italy in order to develop together innovative agro-industrial value chains that were spread among our farmers of cardoon. Moving to our days, last year, as Alessia Campora said that starting with this web conference, Resoil Foundation was born, and now we are fully engaged in Materagro. Materagro is an open innovation model involving agriculture and industry. It's a unique and innovative experiment in terms of structure, of products developed, and of sustainable agricultural practices and integrated systems that are applied in Italy for the first time. And with Materagro, we have created a bridge, as Katia Bassioli said in her presentation. We have created a bridge. We have connected together, at one side, the first green chemistry plants built in Europe by Novamont, and to the other side, one of the greenest agriculture in the world, represented by Coldiretti and our farmers. Together, we are working in Materagro in one of the richest countries in terms of biodiversity, that is Italy, and at the same time, we are working in one of the countries that is most at risk from climate change. So with Materagro, we have built a real example of circular bioeconomy that is moving from farmers and rural areas with crops production as a sunflower or cardoon. And we are going to green chemistry plants, and then we are coming back to farmers, because farmers are not only involved in growing crops such as sunflower or cardoon, but they are also involved because they can use, and they are using in these days, they are using a wide variety of biochemicals products. For example, biodegradable mulching films. And with this type of mulching films, we have a complete degradation. And so we avoid problem of plastic pollution in soils and water. We are also using as farmers some innovative plant protection products based on pelargonic acid, and also other and also innovative herbicides based on pelargonic acid. And with these with these new products, we can also reduce impact to soil and water pollution from plant protection products, because these products are completely natural. And then we are also using as farmers new biolubricants, reducing these biolubricants are used in our agricultural machinery in these days in our farms, and with using of biolubricants we can reduce the use of mineral oils in agricultural activities. With these circular bioeconomy product, we are also as farmers, we can also use feed for our animals with a high level of proteins. And this feed can also replace soya production that is hardly insufficient in Italy. So with this project, Mater Agro, we are also focused on research and innovation, because research and innovation can never stop. So we are investing in an experimental farm for dry crops. Going to a conclusion, we are building in Italy, we have built new productive districts of biochemicals that are working in Italy with a short distance between cultivated areas and green chemistry plants. And this, with these productive districts, we have created also new agricultural dry crops value chain. These new value chains were born in Sardinia region, but they can be a great opportunity for arid lands in Italy, especially in the southern part of our country. Finally, Mater Agro, I think it's really a best practice of circular bioeconomy that is nowadays working in Italy. As Katia Bastioli said before, we are trying to make more with less. And so with the Mater Agro, we have created new crops for our farmers. We have created new biochemicals products, but we are also measuring every day the impact of our work. And we can say that we have a positive impact on income for our farmers, on biochemical production completely made in Italy, but we have also a positive impact that we can measure also today in increasing soil fertility and also in reducing desertification of soil that is a problem in all the Mediterranean area. Then we have also a positive impact on reducing risks for water and soil pollution. And finally, we are reducing risks for climate change that is a very important challenge in our country. So we think that with Mater Agro, we can work together to build the agriculture of the future. I think I can stop my presentation, and if you have some questions, I am ready to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moncalvo. Now we will go a little bit deeper in the bioeconomy and the role of recycling bio-waste into resources. Particularly, the next speaker is Mario Ricci, who is a senior expert at Consorzio Italiano Compostatori. So, Mario, if you're ready.
Almost ready. I'm trying to share my screen. Just give me a second, Alessia. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
First of all, let me see if it works. So you should be able to see my screen in this moment. I don't know if it applies or not.
Yes. Okay, I can just see your screen.
Okay, so you can see the presentation or the screen?
No.
What do you see?
Screen now.
Okay. Then
the presentation is okay.
Okay, it takes some longer. First of all, good morning to all the participants. My name is Marco Ricci, not Mario. Okay.
Perfetto.
Perfect. Here we go. First of all, thanks for inviting us. I will try to focus a little more on the practical part of what our Compost and Biogas Association does in Italy to transform what we call bio-waste, with European wording, into resources in the framework of the bioeconomy for soil regeneration. Just a few words about CHIC. It's a voluntary organization made basically of industrial composting and biogas facilities, but our members include public and private companies, and of course, suppliers of technologies. We are proud in the effort to making this networking that both
Katia Bestioli and Roberto Moncalvo were pointing out before me, we do networking a lot. And so two of our members are the Italian sector, representing the Italian sector of private waste management companies and of public waste management companies. We represent today roughly 70% of all organic waste that is collected separately in Italian cities and towns, and which is recycled. And among our facilities, we have roughly 9 out of 10 of what we call big or industrial scale facilities, which are exceeding 100 tons per annum of treatment capacity. As said, our association is now nearing its 30 years anniversary. That will be next year. And in these 3 decades, we have worked extensively with local authorities, trade association, but also with those players and stakeholders which will be in charge of using our products. In key numbers, this is our main feedstock, which gets into Italian composting and biogas facilities. It's organic waste or bio-waste, as it's named in Europe, which is collected separately by household and commercial activities, and which is transformed into compost and partially into biogas. As you can see, the Italian scheme is particularly effective in diverting food waste and collecting it separately from households. And in this connection, the use of compostable liners and to some extent paper bags has been very effective to promote this kind of collection. Looking at the bioeconomy, our main physical output is compost. Compost has the status of a product in Italy since more than 20 years now. And as you can see from this slide, it is obtained or derived from 2 types of facilities, composting only, and more recently, a more sophisticated industrial facility, which produces both biogas and compost from recycling bio-waste. From the point of view of the bioeconomy, a modern biorefinery in Italy treating waste looks like this, and I tried to simplify it in pictures. On one side, we have a solid output which is compost, but from the same waste, we are able to obtain biogas, which nowadays is more and more transformed into biomethane. And for the larger facilities, some are starting also to use excess heat for decentralized heating. And here you can see pipelines from a facility located in Veneto region, and which is used to heat local buildings located next to the facility. So it shows somehow the flexibility of the approach of the bioeconomy applied to bio-waste. Our association has been and is consistently engaged in promoting quality in the bioeconomy. And quality put into practice by CHIC means that we started to develop a label for labeling compost quality. And today this label, which is voluntary in Italy, is given to about 43% of all compost produced in our country. Besides, we started in 2006 a certification scheme for compostable materials made by bioplastics, made by paper, made by blends of the two. And we are currently also engaged in this activity, looking at the issue of how to develop the bioplastic sector, giving advantages and being compatible with our recycling sector. And our most recent quality label is what we call fertile biomethane, which has of course been developed in order to assess the quality of biomethane produced in composting and anaerobic digestion plants. So again, looking at the implications that are when it comes to compost and the impacts on soil. In the last 5 to 6 years, we were able to raise our efforts in focusing much more in quality and awareness about compost. This is something that we have always followed from the technical point of view, so interacting with stakeholders, but we realized that we needed to get back to a general public or publicum in Italy to clearly show what are the advantages of valorizing compost quality in Italy. And we did it at the Italian level on the left, and being engaged with international initiatives like the one we are talking today, or like the International Compost Awareness Week, which is an international activity which happens once per year in May. Going into specific details and just showing a few examples, the CIC started very recently a long-term field trial at the Navarro project, and we hope to be able to continue this activity for the next 10 to 20 years. So it was very interesting to listen to Professor Mcgrath experiences in UK, where they have these kinds of tests ongoing for nowadays half a century. We are cooperating with Farmers Association, and we are also cooperating. We've signed a memorandum of understanding for incentivizing soil regeneration with called Directive a couple of years ago. And so this is something that we do intensively. Most recently, we have published and have started also an activity with organic farming in Italy. As said, we have a dedicated event at the World Soil Day, which we named From Earth to Earth, because in our point of view, recycling organics into compost is circular economy since the dawn and since the beginning of composting. And last but not least, we launched together with our European compost partners a global awareness campaign directed, I would say, to European decision makers, so that compost and soil conservation regeneration becomes fundamental and to be included in European legislation. I'm not going into detail of that. Last but not least, since the focus of today is somehow quantifying the benefits of restoring soil organic matter and maintaining soil fertility and soil health, I'm pleased to announce that we are going to present at Ecomondo one of the few English publication of CIC, which is going to be printed in these days, and which try to quantify, of course, the benefits of soil to soil of a quality compost, trying to give a more detailed analysis of the economic value that this strategy implies. It has been published more looking at waste managers, less on soil experts, but we believe that if we are able to show to the waste management sector at Italian level and globally what the benefits can be of putting back organics and organic matter to soil in the form of compost, then this will help these decision makers to pay more attention in their strategies. And as you can see from this last slide, the benefits in terms of benefits that can be given back to the agricultural sector are much higher than initially assumed. Today, in Italy, the economic value, the market value of quality compost ranges between €5 per ton to €15 per ton. But if you look at the potential of carbon sequestration, of the nutrient value displacing conventional fertilizers, well, then you get to numbers which are at least twice the maximum we get today. So it is a triggering and important factor to consider when we talk about soil organic matter in soil and the role that recycling organics or biowaste can play. This was basically my last slides. If somebody of you will be in Italy end of November, we would be more than pleased to meet you in the bioeconomy sector of a very important fair in Rimini that will focus also on some of the topics which have been touched today in this very interesting web conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco, and sorry for having misread your name before. Very nice presentation, very interesting. Now we continue to talk about circular economy and bioeconomy, and we explore the role of this concept in agriculture. Next speaker is Lorella Rossi. She's a manager in technical area at Consorzio Italiano Biogas. So Lorella, if you are ready.
Yeah, good morning to everyone. Many thanks for the invitation to attend this event. I'm very happy to replace my president, Piero Gattoni, and I bring you his greeting. Now I share my screen. It's okay?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay. First of all, a few words about Consorzio Italiano Biogas. CIB aggregates and represent the agriculture, biogas, biomethane supply chain in Italy, with more than 700 farms with biogas plant and more than 70 biogas plant maker and a lot of supporter and institution. We speak about biogas and anaerobic digestion, and we can say that biogas is not just like any other bioenergy, thanks to our two important pillars. First of all, anaerobic digestion, it's important to remember that is a natural patent-free process that is very flexible, very modular, and allow the very different biomasses to be treated together with high or low humidity, for example. At the same time, our pillar are our soil. We take care of our land. We don't just take from it, we give back the digestate, the residues of anaerobic digestion. And Italian experience was different from German one, because we define an approach called biogas done right model. It is a different way of farming, improving economic and environmental performances of the farm. And the main topic of this approach are the valorization of any kind of manure and other residual biomasses. Our plant treat only residual biomass not managed as waste. Waste come to waste plant. Other point are keeping the soil covered the whole year, applying new and improved crop rotation with a larger fraction of nitrogen fixing crops and other double crop. Other important point, as I said before, is organic fertilization with digestate. And at the end, we learn another important aspect, the shift from deep ploughing to precision farming and minimum tillage agriculture. Strip tillage and sod seeding are now used in our farm. And obviously, at the same time, we produce renewable energy. After more than 10 years of biogas done right experience, we have understood what a biogas plant can do on a farm. It facilitates the agro conversion of all agriculture practices. And so we are very aware of our responsibilities in terms of emission and climate change. So last year during lockdown, we defined our vision of the agriculture in the future. And so was born our project, Farming for Future, 10 Action to Farm the Future. 8 actions are for farmer, and the most important are action linked to anaerobic digestion, and 2 actions are for industry. With our roadmap providing the production of 6.5 billion cubic meter of biomethane by 2030. We produce not only biomethane, as you know, but also a big amount of renewable CO2 that industry can valorize as bio-based material and or as other renewable gases. With this approach, Italian agriculture emission can be reduced by more than 30%. 2 important pillars. I repeat this concept, but I'm sure that it is one of the most important point. It is important to remember the importance of doing organic fertilization via digestate, because digestate has much better, for example, hygienic qualities than manure. Is a product rich in organic matter, very stable, with a carbon to nitrogen ratio generally very close to soil organic matter. In general, if I think to public opinion, I say that the return of digestate and generally the return of stabilized organic matter, such as compost, to the soil is a sustainable practice to be supported and not to be opposed, like sometimes succeed. In general, knowledge and awareness of the fertilizing power of digestate is growing, and in our farm, advanced field distribution systems are now used. Here we can find some example. There are a lot of field distribution system and equipment with high nutrient recycling efficiency. Is very important to spread digestate when crops need it. The second important pillar of our vision is the sequential cropping. In other words, we say more photosynthesis per land unit. We have learned to produce on the same land 2 crops instead of 1. So we have 2 crops, one for feed sector chain, and 1 crop to produce biogas. This approach has a lot of benefit. We know that if we haven't bare land, we have less erosion, we have less leaching, and we have more water retention capacity. We have more nutrient recycling. And we can also say that if we have a crop, an additional crop, we have also more digested for organic fertilization. This is, for example, important in an area where there aren't livestock, or it is important if we have improved area for organic agriculture, as farm to fork strategy asks us. I go to the end of my presentation because I think many important concepts are almost treated. And I say that circular economy in agriculture is possible, is improved thanks to biomethane production. The benefits are many, or for farmer, but also for everybody. Because with the diffusion of biogas, biomethane production, we are able to recover and valorize residual biomass without, for example, other use in the food chain. Biogas ensures certainty of withdrawal of processing residues. Agroecological transition of agriculture, as I said before. We can have the diffusion of organic fertilization even where there's no livestock. How we can improve soil carbon in our soil if there aren't organic matter, stabilized organic matter. Nutrient recycling and less use of chemical fertilizer. Our farmer reduce urea use of more than 50–60%. Nutrient recycling is possible. And I repeat, we are able to improving physical, chemical, and biological fertility of our soil, or other than biodiversity. And at the same time, more carbon capture from the atmosphere and improved resilience to climate change. As our Dio of our vision, Professor Ratan Lal, we have to produce more with less. And so thanks to the integration with the biogas, biomethane production, we are able to produce, to continue the production of quality food, but with lower carbon footprint. And thanks, or at the same time, we produce sustainable, renewable energy. And we love conclude saying agriculture is part of the problem, but can be part of the solution in fighting climate change. And I repeat, soil is the main actor. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Rossi. So I think we can go on with the next presentation that will explore the role of circular bioeconomy in urban system. The speaker is Andrea Magarini. Andrea is coordinator of the Food Policy Initiative that is taking place in Milan. So Andrea, if you're ready, you can share your slide if you want.
Yes. So thank you for my invitation. I share the slide, and I think that they are working. Yes. So why engage a city? We work with some of the actors that are speaking before me, because cities are the perfect place to try to implement bioeconomy fluxes and approaches to the circular economy that tackle the food system. As mentioned, I work for the city of Milan. Milan started its food journey in 2015 when we hosted the World Expo, Feeding the Planet, by studying our food system. And we, after that period, after 2015, we tried to implement a food policy of Milan that worked to establish different initiatives that connecting dots, connecting infrastructure, connecting energy, connecting actors in Milan. Regarding bioeconomy, I show on my slide this research that was delivered together also with Novamont and with our main partner, that is Cariplo Foundation, to study the different opportunities of circular economy by studying different fluxes of waste connected to food system, as well as sludges, as well as all the infrastructure. And I think that is very, very interesting also regarding with the soil, because by exploiting all of our matter, we can produce new matter and new materials also for soil regeneration. But today, and this is material that I give to you. Today I want to show you some opportunities regarding one of the big drivers that we have as municipality. So the school canteens, and through the school canteens, our public procurement that can be connected with local agriculture, and by the decision of what we include in the criteria of the tender, we can try also to innovate the way in which the local producers are working on their soil. And so first, a background on our procurement. So in the entire metropolitan area of Milan are produced per year 71 million of public meals from hospitals, school canteens, kindergarten, elderly residences, and so on. And on that, within our municipality, we have a total control of the school canteen system, because we have a public agency, Milano Ristorazione, that per year manage and produce 70 million meals from raw materials. And this is a huge driver to connect local production. Regarding agriculture, here's some background information about Milan, metropolitan area, and as well regional area. But come back to metropolitan area, Milan is surrounded by an agricultural park of more than 33,000 of hectares with this kind of production. Regarding again the municipality of Milan, we have more or less about 3,000 of hectares of agricultural surface, on which 1/3 is owned by the municipality. And so again, we can try to connect our public driver. And we work a lot with these farmers, also because in 2014 was launched a set of agricultural districts, so in which we connect the different producer in a form of organization. And nearby Milan, we have 5 agricultural districts that engage together about 200 of farmers. With them, we establish a deal, so an agricultural and territorial framework that is named Milano Metropoli Rurale, that work from one side to maintain active this relation between the city and the rural area. And from the other side, to implement an action plan for more than 94 actions from different fields of action, but everything coordinating in this plan. So from water management to landscape to soil to economic point of view. And this is a perfect space in which the city and the other public institutions, like the Metropolitan Authority as well the Regional Authority, are working together with farmers to orientate our local production. And within this space of debate with local farmers, we have tried to do some opportunities, because again, from public procurement, we can procure our local food. And from local producer, we have a lot of farmers. And so we start a set of analysis, also exploiting a database produced by the University of Milan and other local university with Cariplo Foundation on the consumption of a public procurement in aggregated way, and the opportunities and the different quantity of food that are produced in our same metropolitan area. And so here we put 3 examples from fruit, vegetable, and milk. And also here you can see, for instance, that the entire public procurement system of our metropolitan area per year need about 40,000 of tons per year of fruit, of which just one is organic. And very important is to understand how many soil are needed to produce that kind of food. And so the soil needed for produce 40,000 is 300 of hectares. But in our metropolitan area, we have today only 22 hectares. So for the fruit, we haven't the opportunity to establish short supply chain. Again, for vegetable, we have some partial offer, because again, I don't repeat this exercise, but we are nearby to the goal. And so we can include in the next tender of our public procurement system some criterion to organize local production. For the milk, again, is possible because we have a lot of milk production. We do a test in 2016, 17, and also last year on one specific short supply chain of rice, by trying to exploiting also the national procurement code and the national new code of minimum environmental criteria. Is a work in which the municipality is trying also to exploit all the legislative opportunities of our territory. And so working with the farmers and working together with our direction of procurement, we do this pilot test. And so all the rice of our school canteens come from within the territorial of Milan. And for one pilot year. Then we launch a public tender, but working together with the farmers, they are more, for them is more simple to participate in the tender. After this pilot, we try to scaling up this exercise, this experience also in other 90 local short supply chain that at the end can be procured from our school canteen system. This project is funded also with the program, the rural development program of our region, and is a test also to try in the near future to scaling up in all the short supply chain in which we know that there are local offer. And to conclude, also to stay in the time, to conclude, I think that we can work together to connect the different institutional opportunities of our procurement, economic actors like farmer and districts, and also all the legislative innovation activities to try to push in our procurement more organic, and so again more opportunity for our soil. Thanks to engage me in this webinar, and I'm stay here with you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. So next presentation. For next presentation, we have Dr. Natalie Gontard, that is a research director in the Agropolymer Engineering and Emerging Technology Unit at INRAE. That she's presenting also with her colleague Lucille Chatelard, that is a lecturer at the University of Montpellier. And they will talk about the challenge ahead for biodegradable packaging materials.
Okay, good morning. So I'm Nathalie Gontard, and I will make this presentation. Thanks for the nice introduction. I will make this presentation with my colleague Lucille. So can you see our screen?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So we will talk a little bit about soil and, in fact, about the behavior of plastic in relationship with soil health and which type of solution we are developing. Just to remind you that there is 3 key steps on the life cycle of plastic materials: the production itself, the usage, and then the post-usage. And this is this 3rd key step that is producing issues, and with the accumulation of plastic materials which can last a very, very long time in our environment. Here you can see some example picture with residues of plastics, and the life of plastic in our environment would be from, I would say, more than 100 years up to more than 1,000 years. So plastic is really is displaying a linear behavior, and this plastic material after usage, they are accumulating, they are fragmenting. This is very important, slowly fragmenting. They are also diffusing, absorbing pollutants, and being able to be translocated into our organs and the organs of living beings. And this is really the main danger and risk related to the use of plastic. This plastic, the smaller they are able to diffuse in the different compartments of our environments. Maybe we can, okay, yes, next slide. So during the life chain of plastic, I would not say the life cycle, because this is not really a cycle. There is the emission in the environment, like greenhouse gas emission and so on. And but there is also the formation of particles of plastic, first microparticle and then nanoparticles. It takes a very long time, and they are able, the smaller are the plastic particles, the better they are traveling, diffusing within our environments, in the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, the biosphere, but also the lithosphere. Of course, soil are highly impacted and are highly already containing high contents of micro and nanoparticles of plastic, interfering with their health and all the system participating to the soil's health and fertility. Up to now, our knowledge, we have huge gap of knowledge on the impact of plastic in our environment, including soils. Life cycle analyses are able to quantify the emission and the short-term impact of plastic, but not the long-term one. Next slides. So, as a conclusion, it should be kept that the life cycle of plastic is very complex, and we still have huge gap of knowledge about this impact. We know that the risk is very high, but we are not able to quantify it, and the results is that it is very difficult to take it into account in designing new materials. Next slides. So in our team, we decided to, since very long time, to work on designing biodegradable materials in order to substitute plastic materials from petrochemicals, from oils. Biodegradable materials, we are mainly working on developing polyhydroxyalkanoate-based materials by using not food, but agricultural residues, which are not used for food or feed usages, in order to not interfere or compete with food usage of agricultural crops. So we are using only agricultural residues. So these type of materials have been developed in the framework of different European projects that we have either coordinated, like the Ecobioca project, the NOAA project, or the GlobePack project, but also in the framework of a project where we were partners, such as the Reserbeast project or the Usable project. But these biodegradable materials are not always sufficiently or adapted to the composting condition in industrial condition. And then I will let my colleagues. Lucia.
Thank you, Natalie. So, yeah, as Natalie said, biodegradable materials are not able to reintegrate the natural carbon cycles we can expect. So, for example, on the slide, you can see different polymers, different packaging who have been put into the soil for 85 days. And you can see that for materials like polypropylene, for example, this type of materials doesn't degrade at all. At the opposite, some material made of PHA, like the second and the third one, can degrade after 85 days. When we speak about degradation in anaerobic conditions, we can see that most of them are not biodegradable in this system. In 80, few works only present the biodegradation of plastic, but every time it shows that it is an incomplete biodegradation. So the question that we ask is, what are the physical and chemical and biological rules of plastic biodegradation, and how we can use them to better design biodegradable polymers? Our strategy to answer this question is to select a range of different polymeric materials such as cellulose, PET, starch PTA, that is a matter B materials, PLA or PHA, for example, and some homemade PHA materials that we have in the team, to submit them to different treatments, so no treatment or grinding or UV radiation, for example, and then to better understand the biodegradation happening, both in our aerobic condition or anaerobic condition. We try to select different parameters such as moisture, aeration, and we do it in lab scale or in pilot scales, in AD or composting condition, processes. Then we'll do some analysis of the bioprocess to understand the percentage of biodegradation of each materials, then the microbial community developed during the biodegradation, and the different soluble co-metabolites that are being produced. And we will convert this result to the materials parameter, to the structure, or to the different chemical bonds that we can see inside the materials. From this analysis, we will try to understand what are the biodegradation rules about the crystallinity, the filler ratio, and do we find key microbial species that can biodegrade better the materials? And with all this information, our idea is to do an eco-conception, an eco-design of new material to maximize the biodegradation according to the rules we defined before. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation. The next speaker will be Damiano Di Simone. The next and the last presentation of today will summarize the main message, I think, for a little bit of this conference, because it will underline the critical role that soil health and preservation will play in the bioeconomy, in food sustainability, but also in achieving climate goals. So Damiano Di Simone is the scientific coordinator of Legambiente, and specifically for the Soil for Life project. And he will discuss all these points in his presentation. So Damiano, if you have to share your slide.
Okay. Good morning. Yeah, as you said. Oh, no, I sounded worried. Sorry. Yes. Okay. I hope it works. It's okay. Thanks. Well, good morning to everybody. Yes, I am the scientific coordinator of the Soil for Life project. It is a life project for communication and governance. with a wide partnership of Italian and foreign and European partners. Between them, there are scientific agencies, the Milan Polytechnic University and the municipality of Rome, but also NGOs and farmer organizations such as CIA. This is a project in which with many actions. Probably the more committing is the translation of the voluntary guidelines for sustainable soil management into training and practice by involving farmers and professionals involved in the soil management, such as technicals or land planner or projectists or geologists. So to transform something like a voluntary guidelines into practice, so a strong action of communication and training. But the action of which I want to speak today is an action that is in progress and it involves an YAF organization that is a CCIVS. That is the steering committee for the International Voluntary Service and is based in Paris, the UNESCO premises. And it was a collective work involving young people from many countries in Europe and in the rest of the world to share a soil manifesto that will be an awareness initiative that will be developed in the next few months till to the presentation to the UNESCO Assembly in 2022. And the work that was made with the young people and with involved in the project was to write a storytelling, a different storytelling about soil, about sustainability and soil, living from the theme of the planetary boundaries. So to acknowledge that the productive land users are presently the main drivers of the breaking through of planetary ecological boundaries, and them has already occurred in a wide part, in particular for about the biodiversity loss, the increase in the biogeochemical flux of nitrogen and phosphorus, and in which the responsibility of the industrial agriculture practices over the last decades is very prominent, is very high, and another boundary that has been broke is the one relative to land system change, in which the expansion of arable land and the pasture land is the main driver. Furthermore, the food system is also responsible for 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. This is well known, but what in the outlook, if we don't act on this side, the outlook is very negative for the next future, because the food system may become in the next decade probably the first of the responsible of greenhouse gas emission. Well, the consequence is that land is over. No further expansion of productive land uses is consistent with a sustainability. You know, what we can say that there is not a soil B, not just a planet B, but also soil in our planet is used to the maximum extent compatible with a sustainable vision. This is the rate of the degree of soil transformation over the last two centuries. The land uses dedicated to agriculture and livestock farming have grown fivefold, and presently they involve 1/2 of the vegetated land on our planet, of the habitable land. So it is not possible to imagine to increase this degree of soil, of land use, compromising the natural vegetation of forest and other natural feature of soil of our planet. What we approach also with in our work is to change the storytelling about also what is the storytelling of an European clean agriculture or European climate-friendly agriculture. That is not properly true if we consider also the footprint of the European agriculture, the figure of greenhouse gas emission in Europe are about 1/2 than the rest of the world. But in this figure is not considered that, for example, European agriculture is responsible of outsourced emissions that are not accounted in the European calculation, that are probably also wider than European domestic emission, in particular for the production of feeds for livestock farming, and in particular maize and soy beans that are, how is it known, are farmed mainly in the American continent, with a strong responsibility on deforestation and transformation of forest into pasture land, and then in arable land with huge emissions of CO2. This is part of the narrative that is often neglected when we speak about the European agriculture, and so we think that many things needs to change for having a more genuine storytelling. In particular, the impact of livestock farming is very relevant, because in fact the shift in dietary profiles in Western country is responsible for a strong ineffectiveness of in the use of land, because more than three quarter of land is used for growing, for producing feedstocks, for animal farming, but from this sector we receive just only one minor part of our caloric and proteic needs. So this the challenges or we approached with our manifesto is first that yes, we need to regenerate soil that has been degraded. We have to prevent the degradation of soil, but first of all, we have to protect intact soil, such as peatlands, forests, grasslands, because we cannot increase the use, the productive use of soil, and what we need is also to stop the outsourcing of land use change, of which Europe, the developed country, are responsible with respect to the rest of the world. And for this, is European Soil Directive is something that is strongly needed. This was part of also another advocacy action that we deployed in 2021 during the European consultation for the new soil strategy that is waited for the next few months, in which we asked to strongly support the need of having a European soil directive to protect our intact soils in Europe and in the rest of the world. The second challenge is that agroecological transition is strongly required to stop and reverse soil degradation. What we say is that agriculture must place soil and not industrial impacts back at the center of its practices, and this is the core of the Soil for Life manifesto that we have shared with the CCIBS, with the organization. Europe and also Italy are part of the problem of land degradation, how this chart displays. So this is something that directly involves Europe. The third challenge is that is a message also for the bioeconomy sector, is that the food system as a whole needs to be innovated, including the sectors of the transformation, distribution, and the engagement of consumers, and naturally, obviously, also the recirculation of organic waste. We have a high level of ambitions, that is to change the behaviors and the dietary patterns of the population. In this chart, we see that if Italian, in the large part of Europe, pattern food of nutrition of diet patterns were extended to the rest of the world, the arable, the vegetated area available on the whole world should not be sufficient for nourish the world population. So also the storytelling about the Mediterranean diet, that is surely a sustainable approach, is something that is really very far from the behaviors of contemporary Mediterranean and Italian population, and this is something that we need to change. We also with policies instrument, with regulation on the food sector to change the dietary pattern of consumers, to change the way in which food is produced and distributed to the consumers. So and the consistency with the farm to form European strategy is something of strongly required. And the lessons is that innovative and circular approaches in the development of bioeconomy can expand opportunities for rural communities, surely providing services and raw material to society as a whole, and to accelerate the exit from the fossil age. But to be effective, they must be part of an agroecological transition focused on the food system, in which soil stands in the center of the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Di Simine. This was the last presentation of today, but if you have any question related to the presentation of this conference, I encourage you to send them through the contact form that is available on the site of Resoil Foundation at resoilfoundation.org. Moreover, the recording of this conference will be available in the next few days on the Resoil Foundation website, but also on their YouTube channel. I want to thank you all the speakers for their interesting contribution, and I want to thank you also all the participants for staying with us today and for attending this conference. Also, I believe this is very important, because I really believe that soil are at the center of climate change fight, and this is particularly important in this day because we are approaching the COP26 of Glasgow. And I think also that all the initiative and all the efforts that have been presented today are surely a step forward in the Italian and international ecological transition. And for this reason, I'm also very proud to be a member of the Resolve Foundation, that in this case is carrying on a forward-looking work on soil preservation and restoration. And finally, I want to thank all the people that have been involved in the realization of this conference for their job and for their commitment. So I want to thank you all, and I wish you to have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.